By 1903, the Russian Empire was the largest nation on Earth by land mass, and it was quietly coming apart at the seams. Tsar Nicholas II inherited the throne in 1894, unprepared. His father, Alexander III, died unexpectedly at 49. Nicholas, 26, unsuited for autocracy, stepped into a role that required a different man entirely. He was gentle, devoted to family, religious, and unable to make decisions under pressure. His people and enemies knew it. In years, the empire would feel the consequences. Problems accumulated faster than the court could manage. Industrial revolution reached Russia late and badly. Millions of peasants were pulled into overcrowded cities, lacking infrastructure to absorb them. Labor unrest spread. Revolutionary movements, suppressed for decades, found new oxygen. Socialist revolutionaries, Bolsheviks, Mensheviks, all underground, patient, watching the regime. A regime increasingly unable to hold itself together, its authority fracturing. In 1905, Russia suffered a humiliating military defeat to Japan, a smaller nation. The loss triggered the First Russian Revolution, a wave of uprisings. Nicholas survived by making constitutional concessions, which he immediately tried to walk back. But before all that, before war and uprisings, a private crisis brewed inside the palace walls. A crisis no one in the court was permitted to discuss. Empress Alexandra gave the Tsar 4 daughters, and in 1904, a son, Alexei. Alexei, heir to the throne, the child the dynasty waited for, was dying. He inherited hemophilia. Internal bleeding could be fatal. Physicians had no answer. The court held a secret it could not afford to keep or share. Into this world, with its rotting foundations and its hidden catastrophe at the center, a man arrived. He arrived in St. Petersburg in 1903 without credentials, connections, or a coherent explanation for who he was. A Siberian peasant, barely literate, his village reputation was either miraculous or deeply disturbing. Within 3 years, he had the private ear of Empress Alexandra. Within 5, he was Russia's most controversial figure. Within 10, 4 men had failed to kill him. A revolution had begun, and his predictions had come true. This part of Rasputin's story, his genuine strangeness, often gets erased by the assassination narrative. In his early 20s, he underwent the vision experience, a pilgrimage through the Siberian winter. Something spoke to him on the road back. He arrived home profoundly changed. Villagers reported he could calm distressed animals and heal the sick when physicians had given up. He seemed to know things about people he had never met. The Russian Orthodox Church opened an investigation. They sought evidence he belonged to the Khlysty, a banned sect believing sin was the path to salvation. Their rituals were too disturbing for open reports. They never conclusively proved it, nor did they clear him. He arrived in the capital as a starets, a wandering holy man, a designation with genuine weight in Russian spiritual culture. He was not a priest and had no institutional authority. What he had was presence. Supporters and enemies alike described his eyes. They looked past what you showed him to what you were actually thinking. The Empress described it in her letters as seeing directly into the soul. Alexandra had reason to believe. Her son Alexei, the heir, had hemophilia, a state secret slowly killing him. Episode after episode of internal bleeding, uncontrollable by the empire's finest physicians. Then Rasputin would be brought in, and it would stop. The most documented case was 1912. Alexei suffered a severe hemorrhage. A medical bulletin was issued. The family was told to prepare. Alexandra telegrammed Rasputin in Siberia. He replied, "Do not worry. The little one will not die." The bleeding stopped the following day. Doctors proposed explanations: hypnosis reducing vascular tension, or the removal of aspirin, a blood thinner which physicians had been using, or reduced anxiety in the child following Rasputin's calming of the mother. None of these explanations account for the telegram. He was not present. He sent words across several thousand miles, and a dying child recovered. Alexandra's belief was not naive. It was built on evidence she had watched with her own eyes, repeatedly, over years. She called him the man sent by God. She meant it literally and had substantial reason. This is why his political influence was not simply manipulation. He genuinely seemed to be doing something. Something nothing in official 1913 Russia could do. The court despised him. The nobility feared him. The church had a file on him they couldn't close. And the most powerful woman in the empire would not hear a word against him. Because her son was alive, and she knew why. Rasputin told her once that his protection over Alexei was conditional on her faith. That the moment she doubted, it would end. She never doubted. What he was, exactly, has never been settled. The mystic who healed through presence and prayer. The heretic who served God through sin. The Siberian peasant who walked into the winter palace and made himself indispensable to the people who ran the world. All three may have been the same man. The political situation changed when Russia entered the First World War. Nicholas II left Petrograd to command his armies personally. This decision was considered catastrophic. Alexandra was left to manage the government from the capital. She had no training for this. What she had was Rasputin. His influence over state appointments during this period is documented in her letters, which survived the revolution and have been studied extensively. She relayed his recommendations directly to Nicholas. Ministers were appointed and dismissed based on Rasputin's assessments. He was not subtle about it. He told her that God had given him the ability to see the true character of men. She believed him because she had watched him do things that could not be explained any other way. The nobility had reached a conclusion. Rasputin was destroying the Romanov dynasty from the inside. Whether they believed he was a German spy, a Khlysty operative, a madman with a gift for manipulation, or simply a peasant drunk on his own power, the result was the same. He had to be removed. The man who organized it was Felix Yusupov, one of the wealthiest men in Russia, married to the Tsar's niece, and possessed of an almost theatrical sense of his own importance. He recruited the politician Vladimir Purishkevich and Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's cousin. They had a basement, a plan, and enough cyanide to kill several men. December 16, 1916, Yusupov lured Rasputin to the Moika Palace under the pretense of a social visit, suggesting he might meet Yusupov's wife. He was brought to the basement. He was served wine and cakes that had been laced with potassium cyanide in quantities that should have killed him within minutes. He ate the cakes. He drank the wine. He asked for more wine. Yusupov's account describes him returning upstairs in a state of near collapse, retrieving a revolver and returning to find Rasputin still in the chair. He shot him in the back. The others came down and confirmed he was dead. They went upstairs to wait. Then Rasputin stood up and attacked Yusupov. He got through the basement, up the stairs, and out into the courtyard before they caught him. He was shot 3 more times by multiple people. He was beaten. He was bound, wrapped in a curtain, and dropped through a hole in the ice of the Neva River. The autopsy, conducted after his body was recovered 3 days later, found water in his lungs. The official interpretation is that this means nothing definitive. The popular interpretation, repeated so often it has become folklore, is that he was still alive when he went into the river. Forensic pathologists generally believe the water infiltration occurred post-mortem and that he died from the gunshots. But the record is messy enough that the question has never been entirely closed. What the autopsy cannot explain, and what no one has adequately explained, is the cyanide. The dose administered should have killed him before he finished the first glass. The conspirators never offered a satisfying answer. Some historians have suggested the poison was improperly prepared. Others have suggested Yusupov was exaggerating, or lying outright to make the story more dramatic. Before he died, Rasputin wrote a letter. The letter is dated December 1916 and was given to his daughter with instructions to deliver it only after his death. In it, he addressed Nicholas II directly. He told him that if he was killed by common men, the dynasty would survive. If he was killed by noblemen, the Tsar and his entire family would be dead within 2 years, and the Romanov line would be finished. He was killed by noblemen. Felix Yusupov, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, and their associates were all members of the Russian aristocracy. Nicholas II was executed with his wife and all 5 of his children on July 17, 1918, 19 months after Rasputin's body came out of the Neva River. The letter had been in the family's possession the entire time. The Romanov dynasty ended exactly as Rasputin said it would. There are historians who consider the letter a forgery, produced after the revolution by people who understood the propaganda value of a murdered holy man. There are others who accept it as genuine and treat the prediction as either an educated political guess or something considerably harder to classify. What is not disputed is the timing. What is not disputed is that he wrote it down. What is not disputed is that a Siberian peasant, with a file at the church he never got closed, a reputation for healing that 4 generations of physicians could not replicate or fully debunk, and a presence that broke every social barrier Russia had ever constructed, walked into the center of the most powerful empire on earth and predicted its collapse in writing. And then the collapse happened, and then he was gone. The Russia that killed him did not survive the year. He was buried on the imperial grounds at Tsarskoye Selo. After the revolution, a group of workers exhumed the body and burned it in a nearby forest. Even at the end, no one could quite agree on what to do with what was left of him.